experience, our thoughts, our ideas, and I guess our passion to you today. And very much, that's what today is about. So we did set an agenda, which is on the next slide. In terms of actually what do people in communities need now? Very importantly, as I've said, we've witnessed a lot, but what do they need now? We've been through 2 lockdowns now. We've got different tiers across Greater Manchester. And what do people really need and need our support with? And what is the reality for us as businesses? Many of us around the table today are businesses or part of businesses, and how can we help deliver that within the communities? Social businesses, they've been around for a long time now, but I guess becoming more prevalent in the last 5 years. There's been a lot of growth in that area, and is it now time for there to be more impact from that? And then also, how can we develop? And I guess the real key thing for me is how can we all develop future strategies within our businesses to embrace social value? And I guess as we go through, we're probably going to touch on, well, what is it? What is social value? So Greater Manchester itself, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority has clearly an agenda, a policy, and a framework, and so does Manchester City Council. And we'll touch on that a bit more as we go through. So at this point, I think I'm gonna pass to Nick and Jean, and I think let's talk about building back better in our communities. What does it mean to everyone? What does it mean to you? And just get some experience there. So Nick, social value, building back better in our communities. What does it mean to you?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I think I'm as confused as everybody else about this. I mean, a starting point for me when you asked Forever Manchester to get involved in this was I've been confused by this phrase building back better now for about 6 months since if you Google it, nearly every government and every local authority in the country here and abroad is using that phrase as some sort of catch-all for what happens after the pandemic disappears. So we did a bit of research, and you can see on the slide there that this is supposed to be about happiness, well-being, equality, environment, and employment. Social value is supposed to be about looking past price and profit alone and recognizing the importance of collective community benefit. Building back better, it worries me that it's just already a slogan and has no depth to it. But I think from our perspective at Forever Manchester, it needs to be a new deal that prioritises people, an investment in people. Communities can drive the development process themselves by identifying and mobilising existing, but often unrecognised assets. And by that, I mean, everyone has a set of unique assets. Everyone has strengths, skills, talents, and gifts that they can give to the community. It's a case of, I think, moving from what's wrong to what's strong. And that's something that's always been at the heart of what Forever Manchester is all about. The difficulty I think we have is that if you don't start a Build Back Better programme with some sort of social value at the heart from the bottom, in other words, start with the citizens rather than starting with institutions, it's likely, and I think already in immediate danger of people just paying lip service to it. From my perspective, the most important thing in building back better is having a stronger, more connected community. And that involves involving local people, the people that live in the communities. And it's important to recognise who these people are, because it isn't some sort of great unwashed humongous mass of people that we don't know. It's us. We are the community. Our employees are the community. And I think that's very important to recognise when businesses particularly and institutions start thinking about social value, is how are they actually involving the citizens, their employees, the people that live, love and work in our communities in Greater Manchester. I think with a better understanding of what people want to get involved in, together with the knowledge of what can be used in a neighbourhood. In other words, what local assets there already exist, what people want to get involved with, what can be used in a neighbourhood. We can encourage people to come together and create exciting new projects, and that's been our experience very much throughout the last 9 months. What we've seen, and my colleague Jean is going to give a couple of specific examples of this in a minute, is the resilience that we've shown in Greater Manchester, or particularly community groups in Greater Manchester have shown their ability to adapt and help each other has been phenomenal. I mean, we've been working in partnership with the National Emergencies Trust during the last 9 months, and we've managed to deliver over 2.5 million pounds worth of grants to over 500 groups, and within that we've had to turn down another 500 that we simply didn't have the money to support. But what we've seen is a phenomenal ability for people to go, right, roll the sleeves up and get involved. And these people, it's just me and you going home after a hard day's work or on furlough or whatever, and going, right, I can do something, I can bring something to this table. And I think when people connect with each other and share those strengths, you have got something that is genuinely worth talking about. And I think that's that collective community power that is often overlooked. And as I said earlier, my biggest fear is that building back better becomes a slogan. Social value simply gets adopted by large institutions, and we're focused on need again. And it's, deficits and need are only useful to institutions. What we want to know is, what do people want to do? What do people see about bringing? What do your colleagues want? And I think that's important to recognise when we've got employees in a business, is, do we even know what their role, do they have a separate life in the community? Do we know what they do? Do they go home and run a football club, or are they involved with a cancer support group? But we know from our experience of speaking to our 100 or so business supporters that, yeah, they do. Their employees often don't recognise they're part of that very important force building up, and has been part of this amazing resilience to recover from this bleeding awful year we've had. Forever Manchester is all about giving everyone the opportunity to be happy. And if you go back to what's really at the heart of social value, it's happiness and well-being. And I think what you're seeing now, if you think that this has started principally with local authorities about how to look beyond price and profit when awarding tenders, the problem is the easy get out on this is to look at the usual things that were always wrapped up with corporate social responsibility, which is, the environment and employment. Hey, we've employed 3 apprentices. Hey, look, we recycle our waste. But actually, the real heart of what we could do differently is find out what our employees' involvement in communities are and support it and understand it. And there's real value in that. I mean, a lot of this is going to come down to what the social return on investment, which is getting easier to measure and quantify. But beyond that, the stuff that authorities often laughingly call the fluffy stuff, the stuff where people are actually happy, is the major contribution to people's well-being. And the well-being side of what we do is very much. Got distracted now. Sorry. I'm getting an echo on the screen. It's very much about putting smiles on the faces of our communities, supporting people, transforming the lives of others, bringing local people together to create something special. Gene will give you 2 great examples. Caring about people who care enough to act. So if we can all get together and think about, how do we champion our colleagues, the local people, us in our communities, how do we champion what they're doing to create something extraordinary? I think we will be on the right lines. So if I might just ask Jean now, we what we were looking for was examples of, I think, how ordinary people have reacted and to cope with the situation and what they did beyond what they normally do in communities. So if I could just ask Jean to give those two examples, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, as you'll appreciate, we've got hundreds, as Nick was saying, we've funded over 500 projects in the last 9 months alone, and more than 1,000 each year. But two that struck me, I mean, there are so many, it's difficult to choose, was in particular a couple of boxing clubs that we've supported for a number of years. They do great stuff. They're channeling young people into a lot more about it than that. But they realised they had a duty, if you like, and it's recognising the responsibility they have, not just to the young people attending their groups, but a responsibility to their community, in that those children and young people are there every week. So what do we do with them? Let's keep them going. And more importantly, what can we do for our local community? So a couple of them have done really similar things, in that they've done what we might expect them to do. They've collected food, they've delivered food. But what we have liked about these two that we're talking about in particular, they sort of recognise the stuff apart from food. We know they need food, like hygiene products, which, you know, people are embarrassed to ask for. So they're set up so they don't have to contact anybody. They can leave a message and just say, I need this particular item. But that's absolutely invaluable to somebody who lives on their own with no access to anybody. What they've also done is the normal. They've done online training, basic chair exercises, keeping people happy and healthy. But they've also been thoughtful in doing things like dog walking. If somebody is shielding but might not be that healthy and has somebody else who usually comes into their house, they've stepped in and done that kind of thing. So it's been wonderful to see all this other stuff. But what they've done in particular is listen to their community. They've got to understand what they want locally, and they've delivered it. So it's been really reassuring. They've also set up what we've seen across a lot of our community projects is using Zoom, setting up WhatsApp groups so that they can keep in touch with their community members in their community group, and also engage with the wider community. We've seen community hubs that are normally there as a community centre, sort of holding mums and tots groups, older people's luncheon clubs, outs and brownies. Obviously, none of that has been able to happen. So again, technology stepped in. They've had Zoom, they've had WhatsApp groups. But what they've also done is that same thing of keeping in touch, providing arts and crafts to keep the kids happy who come to mums and tots and scouts and brownies. They've also done different activities for older people that they can do online. So what's been reassuring to us is that these are all volunteer-led. It is the likes of you and me, the people who have full-time jobs most of the time. We know one of the guys at the boxing club is a lawyer at one of the top law firms in town. Didn't go to the boxing club, but was brought up in that area and always knew they'd done great stuff and wanted to get back involved. And these are exactly the type of people, you know, people at Beavers and Struthers that we work with. Some of them I know for a fact are out there volunteering. So it's leading back to what real social value is. Your community is your family, it's your friends, it's your work colleagues in your team, and it's your bigger company. But there is that community outside that building that we should help along the way. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Come back to me if you want to ask for any more examples of what we do. There are so many. The differences we've seen during lockdown is that the support is still needed. We've been supporting mental health support groups, hundreds of them across Greater Manchester. Numbers have increased, they've doubled a number of approaches they need. So they need volunteers who are qualified to help in that. Domestic violence groups, we've seen a group in Altrincham, their numbers have increased by 45%. We've got one in Wigan, it's increased by 292%. The number of referrals they're receiving. So companies do have that responsibility, because those people could be working for you. You don't know what's going on outside of work. And I think that's what we talk about. When I go to Beavers and Struthers, when we work with the company, we go out there and we'll present to the team, we send them regular updates. but it does provide that real flavour of what community is about, more importantly, what their help achieves and how they can get involved. And obviously everybody has a different take on what social value means. But for us, certainly at Forever Manchester, it is about community, and it does deliver that real impact and benefit of social value. It is at grassroots level, it's the people in the street next to you.
Oh, thanks, Jean. And I think, it's interesting. Thank you both. From my perspective, the whole, what does it mean? What's social value all about? And I know we've just popped a slide up there, and, CSR. And I agree with Nick. I think, even within our business, we've been, supporting, and we'll come on to it later, are massively passionate about CSR, giving back, social value. But it is, I guess, for everyone, hopefully around the session today, it is what does it mean? And it is interesting, that what you're saying, Nick, in terms of it's us, isn't it, as individuals, and it's that bottom-up approach to this rather than the top-down approach, which is a business should have some social value. So off we all go and implement a strategy to do it. Whereas actually, as you say, people are already doing it. And the bit that, is heartbreaking for me is to hear that you had to turn 500 projects away. And so for me, it just definitely does reinforce the fact that, businesses but everyone within those businesses, I guess it's a route. Businesses are a route to us all as individuals, aren't we? With all of the assets that Nick talks about in terms of, what we all do, what we're passionate about in our personal lives. We can all bring something to communities, can't we? So I guess that slide there, what is social value? And it is interesting just even looking at the wider perspective in Manchester in terms of, the Combined Authority and Andy Burnham and their perspective of what social value is and what their priorities are around it. But I guess it's that experience in our lives, but how we capture it. And it isn't, as Nick said, it isn't institutionalized. It's not all captured in market prices or goods or products. It's about what we do and how we behave in many ways as well. And I think as employers, being one, then, lots of our colleagues around the table today, it's our behavior as employers and leaders and how we embrace within our organization for people to fulfill whatever they want to do within social value is really, really important. And I guess then moving on from that, so what do people and communities need now? And I think Jean and Nick, you're both talking about more of the sort of grassroots communities, because there's lots of conversation with GMCA about the employment and skills side of things as well. But I guess, is that what you see as the key priorities, the sort of grassroots community where there's the inequalities, where the poverty and the support in that way? Is that what you're seeing as the real thrust of what we need at the moment?
Well, I think one thing's for sure. I think, when it comes to January, we're still not sure what the hell is going to happen next year. But one thing I know, or Forever Manchester know already, is that the money we had to support people during the pandemic has gone.
Yeah.
There isn't, we haven't got another 2.5 million to give out for the next 6 months. So we've already turned 500 people away, and we're still getting applications, even though our grant channels are closed at the moment. And this doesn't even include people getting on with doing the stuff they normally do. We've been focused for 9 months on supporting people who are helping each other get through this pandemic.
Yeah.
What we're starting to see now is a massive increase in, we guess, it's not an exact figure, but we guess there are, at any one time, 20,000 active community groups in Greater Manchester. Now, the majority of them have been unable to continue with their normal stuff during the last 9 months. So, as you can imagine, some stuff's like hobby stuff, but, groups like dementia, people supporting dementia sufferers, people supporting families with cancer victims, those groups haven't been able to meet, they haven't been able to get on, they haven't been able to do what they do. And they're coming to us now saying, well, look, we've had no income for 9 months. We haven't been able to take subs. We haven't been able to do anything. What do we do next? And the massive danger we've got now is that the whole infrastructure, the community sector infrastructure, if you like, could fall over within 12 months. Because what we're talking about here is relatively small amounts of money. We're not talking about, we don't make grants of £10,000. We're making small grants of, on average £1,000. We've given some bigger grants this time to food banks, because that's been a priority. But we're talking about small amounts of money. So, to cover the insurance for a group, or to cover the cost of heating a building. And this stuff is unseen. I think, a great example of what we're talking about is, don't overlook this. Don't overlook the importance of this, because people get, some of the examples we've seen of where people get confidence of getting involved with the community group that makes them more fit for employment.
Yeah.
It makes them more valuable members of a community, and their self-esteem. Don't overlook the importance of people's self-esteem and people's mental health in all this. Those are the issues that will help the economy, help people be more ready to take jobs or look for jobs.
And I can see the impact we've said of this, if groups aren't meeting it, is that the benefits, the positive impact is that it reduces depression, social isolation, it's keeping people physically and mentally active. And if they're not able to do that, they're going to slide. And that is a cost. There is a cost to that. And, the government have provided pots of funding, because they do know there are 20,000 projects going on, that in that there are, there can be 500,000 people potentially involved, a lot of who are fine, but there are a lot of people who do struggle. And if that activity is not happening, they'll be back at the doctors, they'll be wanting help of different kinds, and that in turn has an impact. And it is your staff, as we say, it is the people we work with. It's starting to understand our real immediate community and the impact on that, but recognising, the wider community out there. But the longer groups don't meet, the bigger impact they have on services, as well as confidence and the ability to get back out there and be happy citizens, really.
Yeah, and it is important, isn't it? It's that wider aspect that I know personally, if I am helping and giving back, then I feel better. So we can just reflect on that individually, can't we? And if we're as businesses embracing that within our colleagues, then that should mean that there's more there. But I guess it's that. In some ways, a lot of this is, I guess it's that financial element that you want. And as you say, and it's not, your support isn't huge in terms of the financials, is it? The grants, that average grants is £1,000, So for most businesses, I would think in Manchester, then that's something that could be something that's in their resource to give and support. And maybe we just need to keep shouting louder in some ways. So I guess, so I know that, what is it that, as well as colleagues, is there anything else that businesses you think can do, as well as supporting colleagues to do more? Is there anything you think that, networking, partnering? We've talked a lot about collaboration, and I'm not sure whether you've seen that anymore at the sort of business level that's had an impact on the communities and actually helping to develop that. I'm not sure if either of you have seen any good examples of that.
Well, I guess an impact of this, where businesses could help with this, is, I think it was in May, GMCA launched a Build Back Better campaign. Now, this is the point I was making about people paying lip service to it. The danger in this is it just becomes a PR exercise and an empty slogan.
Right.
So I don't know how many people signed up to that. I think last time I looked, over 80 businesses had physically signed up to something called Build Back Better in Greater Manchester. I have no idea what that is. I don't know what you signed up. I don't know what businesses have signed up to, because there's no substance behind it. And if it is just about employment and environmental stuff, then what is it? The economic constraints that are going to be on us for the next 10 years will not make it easy to create new employment opportunities for people. So for me, it's got to be about the well-being of our citizens, and that's communities. We need to make, for me, Build Back Better is, we need to make community a cause. It's not a cause, it's seen as something else. it's not cancer, it's not poverty, it's not, but it is support for all those things.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a load of people with their hands out begging for a fiver, like some Dickensian novel with the faces pressed up against the windows. It's not that. This is a hand up. Let's get going. Let's make ourselves more resilient, more capable, more able to take on employment opportunities, more able to tackle the environment issues. But most important, it's about how strong are we going to be over the next 10 years, because there's damn sure it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be really difficult.
And I think, well, I've got some feedback. Thank you, Kamal. So I think definitely in terms of that policy, because they've put a framework out, haven't they, the combined authority, and I think you're right, Nick, they've got 6 priorities in there which cover employment opportunities. It covers environmental stuff, and I think that's clearly another part of the big campaign in Manchester, isn't it, that we're all involved in terms of carbon neutral by 2038. So I guess what people have signed up to is that wider commitment to social value, how the authorities see it. But it does include, there's a strong emphasis within there clearly on, the resilience and helping build strong communities within Greater Manchester, and also the supply chain as well. And I just think on that slide we're looking at now, the most interesting bit that we are seeing as businesses, albeit that we've signed up to these things, is actually when we are commissioning or bidding for work. And when you look at even Manchester City Council as well, has their social value policy up there in terms of if you're commissioning with them, it is about, I think it's 20% of any bid, then they expect to see, evidence of that business, that organisation delivering social value. So I guess for a business, it's that, and especially one that's linked in with the supply chain within the local authorities, there's definitely, rather than just the conscious part of it, there's definitely something that is being signed up to. How I think organisations that we work with are challenged with how they demonstrate it. What is it? I think it does go back to that point that you keep referring to, build back better social value. But what is it all about, and what does it mean? And I think, delivering 20% of social value within any contract for many organisations, sounds a lot, but actually maybe when we all get to see, and we'll come on to it in a moment, when we all get to see what we are already doing and what you're saying, Nick, about, every individual does something, and those individuals as part of organisations therefore need to be encouraged. And I think, hopefully organisations just take this and move forward with it, as you say, and develop some action, and actually developing that strategy. And I think, for me, part of that strategy is that wide range. And so what do we do? So for those on the call that either work with us or are just interested, Geraldine Finn, who's on the call, basically leads this internally for Beever and Struthers. And is extremely passionate about it, but we all are as a business and as a partner group, and actually there is a lot that we do. We write a social value report, and it's on our website. So we like to demonstrate it because we want everybody to join in and this to gather momentum. We have a Beavers fundraising group, and that's set up, and I know Jean works with them very closely and supports them, and that's very much about, the team, our colleagues, our employees, getting involved in what they want to do. Partners aren't involved. We provide the resources and the money as they ask for it, and we also provide the encouragement as well. So lots of community and sponsorship events go on a regular basis. Lots of charities, not just that collecting and sponsoring, but also getting involved with charities as well. So even over this summer, there was an involvement with food banks for the team who wanted to go to share their support. And clearly from that, and we take the skills and employability side of it really, really seriously as well. We provide the link to apprenticeships, we provide work experience, we provide mentoring to schools, and we're very proud and passionate about that. And I just can see that becoming more and more. From an environmental perspective, we're clearly linked with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're clearly linked with groundwork as well, who work with Manchester and Greater Manchester in supporting green spaces and what do we do. And from that perspective, what we did over the summer as well was actually, we've got a bike stand outside now, and it is used, even though there aren't that many of us coming into the office and it's raining because it's Manchester, but it is used. So, that wider perspective. But it doesn't stand still. And I think you are really, really right, Nick. It doesn't stand still, and we need our colleagues, and many of them are around the table. We need our colleagues to keep coming up with ideas that they want us to do and they want us to embrace. And I think anyone that's looking at a strategy for this as a business going forward, yes, if you reflect back on what the Greater Manchester Combined Authority wants and their policy and their framework, it's really helpful because it's got loads of ideas and loads of links to, that network and partnering that can go and does go on really well in Greater Manchester. So lots of links there and good support and resources. But actually, moving on from that, it's just about, as you go, I love it, Nick, what you've said. It's what do we want to do? What can we do? What assets have we got to do it with? And if any organisation's embracing that, then this has got to be better for our communities of Greater Manchester. We'll do more together, won't we? So I don't know whether anybody's got any, before I go back to Nick and Jean, I know Grenville's popped up a comment on there, and I think just to encourage anyone else, if you've got any comments or questions that you'd like to ask us, because we're now at the end of our slides. So in essence, and what we wanted to, I guess, see out there to encourage some debate, thought, discussion, provoke anything from you. So if anybody else wants to say anything, I think there's some hands up as well. So if anybody wants to say anything, if you pop it in the chat, your question in the chat, I think it's going to be easier with so many people on the call for us to see it. But Nick, have you got anything else you'd like to say in the meantime while people are thinking about some questions?
There's an example of what I'm talking about, which I you've probably heard me talk about it before, Sue, but I romance it a little bit to make it slightly amusing. But the best example of this, of people-led activity, was a while back. We had a tranche of money to deliver. It came from a government department, and it was to help tackle childhood obesity. But it was a classic top-down approach. So it was the area that was going to be funded was selected based on the indices of deprivation. So in other words, it was selected on the basis of how shite the government thought the area was. And we had to go in and try and deliver this money. So we went in and we spoke to the local people, and they said they were quite angry that it was deemed that they had a lot of fat children in the area, and they were quite alarmed by the fact they'd been singled out for this money. It wasn't a huge pot of money anyway. So we asked the question, well, if you don't think that is an issue, what is the big issue locally? And the big issue for them locally was dog poo.
Oh.
And they said, it used to be lovely around here, but the pavements are littered with dog poo. So we asked them whose responsibility they thought that was, and they quite clearly thought it was the local authorities' responsibility. And we went, well, it's not, is it? It's you guys with the girls with the dogs who are actually littering the pavement. Why don't you come up with a solution to solve it? And they did. They came back quite simply, and they said, right, we've formed a little group called Poo Busters, and we'd like a grant to buy some bioluminescent spray, and we will go around and sort of name and shame the people who are doing this. And within 6 months, this is with a grant of about 80 quid, they formed this group, and they'd almost eliminated the problem from the area within a 6-month period. But that grew into something much better. So it started off with a small group of, say, half a dozen people, and then grew into a wider group who started making friends, and they started litter picking in the area. And then they started adding a further value to the society, which was if someone didn't turn up, they would knock on the door of their friend and see if they were all right. So it started making these connections, which enhanced their well-being. They were probably walking 5 kilometres every day, which is improving their health. And that's gone on now to spawn lots of other little exciting projects, like a community garden and a friendship group. Now, if you try and put an exact social value on that,
yeah,
in monetary terms, you probably could come up with a figure, but it's not an exact figure, and it belies the actual importance of what happened there. And that's what that to me, if we're going to build back better, I mean, I've had an email this week from an authority saying we're going to have no money next year to support communities. We're going to have to tighten the budget. What are you going to do about it?
yeah.
Our income comes from businesses and individuals. So without that support, no one's going to do anything about it.
Yeah. And that's yeah, I mean, we've all seen the commitment that the governments and authorities have been making to the COVID situation, but the pot isn't endless, is it? So it's not surprising that you're now getting that communication. And I think it is that this is why the collective of us, and it's so interesting that you talk about something that could be seen to be in that monetary value, Nick, forgive me, a small thing. It was something small but had a big impact, and the ripple effect of that impact across that community is just amazing, isn't it? So even if we each took to become responsible for ourselves doing something, encouraging others to do something, and then businesses collectively getting behind that, then, as you said earlier, that's so powerful, isn't it? And that will make such a difference. I think it's, and I saw Grenfell's comment before, and I do agree. There's lots of collaboration going on, and lots of examples of collaboration going on in a bigger perspective, I guess, between in the care sector and the housing sector, where there's lots of inequalities and lots of need, and I think that's definitely something that we are seeing lots of. Thank you, Grenfell. But Claire, it was Claire Lawless that had a hand up. So Claire, if you want to talk from Forever Manchester, if you want to come in and say something, please do.
Hi.
Hiya.
It's a really interesting conversation, everybody, and obviously I'm fully behind what Nick and Jean say. I totally agree. I think there is a huge opportunity in the private sector and in businesses around social value, because I think what I'm seeing in the public sector with the Social Value Act and government organisations, as you pointed out earlier, Sue, government organisations are commonly asking anyone who tenders for work that 20% of their score is based on their ability to deliver social value. And there are often requirements and definitions of what that includes and so on. But in my experience of having tendered for public contracts for 20 years, I mean, that's almost all of my career, that it's very difficult to get them to look at social value beyond the environmental aspects, the employment aspects, and supply chain, local supply chains, ethical supply chains, that kind of thing. I've been talking about this with the construction sector, for probably the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And it is very, very difficult. And I think there is a real opportunity in the private sector to be more creative, more innovative. The types of things that you mentioned that you're doing earlier, Sue, it is great stuff. And it builds on what Nick's saying about all employees are part of a community and often do their own volunteering without necessarily even putting that label on it. It's just part, they might see it as their social life or part of what their daily activities are. And I think that, the public sector is a little bit limited, a little bit constrained. There are a whole load of new frameworks out there that tell local authorities what they should be measuring, how they should be measuring it, how they should be valuing it. And that limits the opportunity for them to be creative and innovative and do bizarre, unusual, wonderful, creative things that we are seeing in our communities that are really making a difference to people's lives. And that, I like, someone called it the fluffy stuff earlier, but it's a huge, in our humans hierarchy of need, we talk about shelter, food, but actually our belonging and sense of belonging to a pack is very high up in our human need.
Yeah.
And it's not recognised, I don't think, fully as how important that is to the functioning of humans and society, and therefore the economy.
Yeah, and it is that, isn't it? And it's, I think this is why something like today's session is great, isn't it? I think, you know, between Nick, Jean and Pro Manchester and ourselves, we're talking about doing this more, because I feel that we just need to keep banging on the drum, don't we? And really, it's really interesting, Claire, because it is interesting, because clearly with my business head on, when I am tendering and procuring and I am faced with the 20%, then literally I do go down and go, well, we do that, and we look at their framework. You're right, we look at what they're expecting, what they say their community needs for us, but then it's that other element, isn't it? It's that wider element and that creative bit. And I think even just me being involved in this conversation today, even though I've prepared with Nick and Jean over the last few weeks, is actually that's the bit that we need to keep embracing, because as we've just said, some very small examples of that a big impact on our communities. And I think if one thing that organizations take away from that is to encourage that creativity. I'm now seeing that checklist, you know, for the tendering as something we've just got to be doing. So that isn't adding more, that's just what we should be doing as employers. And actually the fluffy stuff, dare we say it, I might even see if I can get Geraldine to put it like that in our social value report. The fluffy stuff is equally important, isn't it? And we need to balance that in there as well, I think, is what we're seeing. I think John had a question, and I don't know whether Nick's answering them in the chat. I can see John and Nick chatting here. Thank you, Claire, for that. And I guess, Claire, from your perspective, if an organisation wanted to, I guess, ask your advice on what they're doing, you know, with regards to social impact, social value, is that something that you talk to them about how, you know, how they could develop a strategy?
Absolutely, we do a lot of work like that. A lot. Forever Consulting, we work across the UK, so a lot of our work is advising on how people can create social value from their projects, whether it's built environment projects, public service type work. So we've recently done 2 evaluations of employment services led by charities outside of Manchester, actually. But we, you know, part of our work as consultants is saying, here's what these organisations are doing, here is the impact it's having, here is what we can learn from it, here is what they could do to have an even bigger impact. And so that's our sort of core business offer. And we also, because our team, we're sort of pretty much economists, data kind of driven people as well. So we do all of that economic analysis, social return on investment, cost benefit analysis type stuff. So we can do all of it too. And, you know, some people value that because it's easier for them to understand. But I mean, the numbers themselves don't really fully reflect the true impact of what is being achieved, you know, based on some of the stories that Nick and Jean have described. So the numbers are helpful, but, you know, in themselves, there's always a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, those stories are so important, aren't they? I think I see more and more, some of, you know, clearly head of charities and Beever and Struthers, and, you know, financial reporting is my day job. Don't shoot me, I love it. Colleagues round the table that love it, but more and more we are encouraging our clients to tell the story. It's not, you know, accounts aren't just about the numbers, they're about the stories. And one of our charities that's based in Manchester recently, their report was much more than numbers. It was full of case studies. It was case studies for lots of, yeah, and I bet they could have filled it up with a whole book, but, you know, they chose some case studies, and I thought that was so powerful. And maybe that, you know, John and Nick are having that conversation about, you know, whether even social values on the agenda, but how can we get people talking about it and what can we do? And I think maybe that's the other part of the responsibility that we've all got today, is to think about how we can shout and help people shout about all these stories and put them out there and encourage it more, isn't it? Because I think that is what we do and what we need to do. There are businesses around the table. So I'm watching Nick and John's chat linked to what we're talking about as well. So there are businesses around the table today. So I don't know whether anybody else has got any experience about how we can take this forward and maintain or actually create, I guess, is what potentially Nick's saying, in terms of social value being at the heart of businesses. So shout up if you do. I've got a sad face going on the chat here in terms of, just making sure that we can embrace that. So Nick, from your perspective, what do you really think? What would you, if somebody walked to you today and said, I want to embrace this, what do I need to do? As a business, come on, then I want to get involved. What do I need to do? What would be your answer?
For something like this, I mean, John and I have been chatting about, John asked me whether or not I thought, what would we do once we return to some sort of normality? And I sort of rather cynically replied that, no one's embracing it now. So I don't think it's, it's essentially when we get back to normality, I think it'll be off the table if we carry on like this. I mean, I think what's required is, it's something a phrase that we use at Forever Manchester all the time is we need to create a movement of people that actually genuinely believe in this and understand it. I mean, the danger is, I guess between us, Jean and I and the team see probably about, maybe 50 new businesses every year, and we manage relationships of about 100 businesses that already support us. And it's not on their agenda unless we talk to them about it. So I don't know who else is driving this. We were really pleased that Pro Manchester and Beever and Struthers had got together and invited us to take part in this, but I've not seen any evidence that, Claire sees it, I think, with built environment projects where she's actually looking, that's that public sector tender process, that environment. But within businesses, in the same way, if you like, CSR has disappeared off the agenda over the past decade. And I think the decade before that, it was in danger of becoming quite corrupted in terms of what it delivered. I mean, the heart of this is, how invested in social responsibility, social value, or however you want to phrase it, are businesses, and can they be? Because obviously the large businesses have got shareholders to responsibility to. How is it positioned? How do businesses make it part of their principles and values and really embrace it? I know Claire's often come across, in tenders where, we put our case of what social value is, and other people will put that there. Oh yeah, I think I said it at the start. Yeah, well, we're employing 15 apprentices, and that wins. That trumps your social value. It's become a game already.
It really does, Nick. It really does, because we are seeing that examples of one job created. This is a real example. One job created got our competitor a better score than us, who have supported hundreds of people and communities in the same location. And it's I hear some people call it social accounting, but it does. I see, that really does happen.
Yeah, I think on the other hand, we do work with lots of businesses across Greater Manchester who do deliver social value. It is often a little bit prescribed, and it is the more enlightened companies like Beever and Struthers, your Auto Traders, CDL, who really do it from the bottom up and are genuinely thoughtful about what they want to achieve as a company and they talk to their staff. So on the other side of it, different sizes of companies can deliver it in different ways, really. I think it's taking that more holistic approach. And for me, when I'm talking, I talk to sort of 50, 60 companies a year. So it's fascinating for me to see how they deliver their social value. But it's about being thoughtful. And for me, it's about how much impact they want to have. Is it ticking a box because they need to fill in that tender document? Or is it, is it holistic? Is it embedded into the values of a company?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that companies need to look at a bit more. And, we work with tiny companies where it's 2 or 3 people, but they can deliver impact just as much as a company with a few hundred people. It's about attitude and behaviours and the culture of the company. So I think that's important. It's looking at the culture within your company, and that it's embedded from the top to the bottom, really.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, isn't it, Jean? And maybe, from our perspective, I ran business leader forums over the summer through COVID, and mostly what came through from that in terms of I'm going to go back to building back better, because that was a lot of the theme of it, but was the culture, and was changing culture around any topic we talked about. And you know, some of that was even the norm of, you know, how can we work differently, but it was about, you know, in terms of digitalization, but it was all about changing culture. And you're right, that comes from the top as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I know within, you know, you're right, within Beever and Struthers, we are very much supported from the top. Our exec partners are very much, you know, help us embrace this. Kate Wood's got her hand up as you were talking, so I'm guessing it's linked to your conversation. Kate, would you like to say something or ask something?
Oh, hiya. Yeah, all it was when you're talking about the culture in organisations and how and getting them to buy into it. I used to be director of culture for a large IT company, and I think what it needs to be is easy, because I think if you can go with people to businesses with a proposal of this is how it's going to work, this is exactly what you need to do, you know, like some people have already said on the call, then people will adopt it. And I agree completely with everything you've said about it. It has to come from the top, and there has to be an understanding of why it's happening in the business, but it also has to be easy, almost like, you know, social value in a box. You know, it's got to be something that they can just roll out and just happen, because I think otherwise the thing that people are always going to come up against, you know, it's just another thing that they've got to do, isn't it? So they won't do it properly, they'll do it the tick box way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I definitely see that as I'm out and about. Yeah, you know, you have to have a structure within the company for handling social value. And it's often somebody's job on top of their full-time job.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Unless you're a bigger company and you can allocate resource to it. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've got it down to fine art over the years, but it's taken us a long time to learn how to work with businesses so they understand what we do, the impact, but more importantly, how they can support us and how they can get their staff involved. Yeah, and ease is by far the biggest hurdle, the biggest opportunity equally to get people involved and for them to understand. The other thing that we say is, you know, you've got to let your charities and your partners in to the building to meet staff, to get the message across so they understand why they're fundraising or what their company's donating to. And that's the only way you start to build it and embed it in a company, really. And then that's how that ripple effect of more people get involved.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes to empowering the workforce as well. So I used to run cultural ambassadors who were volunteers within the organisation. Like, I know many organisations have similar things, and once you get the people championing it as well, and then it becomes more organic, doesn't it? Because people want to get involved.
It flies then. Once you've got the key people involved who understand it and encourage. Again, it's the cascade that they encourage their colleagues, and you can have enormous impact there, and you know, you are delivering social value. Capture it and shout about it.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, it's about trust, isn't it? Yeah, but yeah, thank you anyway. I think it's great. I've loved this webinar. Thanks.
So, could I just ask you a quick question about your social value at Beever and Struthers? One of the things I think we're very good at, or we're getting a lot better at, is telling the story about how it benefits communities, people. And I think what could be really helpful is to support the change in culture is being able to demonstrate how it impacts internally in businesses. Yeah. I think that is something that, you know, there's various research reports out there, there's various examples of good practice, but I think for changing that culture and embedding it, I think people need to kind of tangibly see and understand, why is it good for business? Yeah. Because, you know, businesses ultimately have a bottom line and have a profit margin, and we all get that. And to change the thing that, you know, it's just something to like a marketing activity or a ploy to make us look good or whatever. It's like, how do we demonstrate that it actually improves your business, that your business is better off from doing it as well?
And it's similar, and it's really interesting that you say that, Claire, because that's been going through my mind as we've been on this call, because I've thought, we report what we do, but it's how we, like other businesses, it's like that social impact reporting, isn't it? How do we look in on it and say, well, this has helped us, or it's helped our teams, you know, going back to what Nick was talking about earlier, it's helped our team in their, you know, even in their home or family life, it might have had that impact there, and we haven't analysed that. We're not there, but I think you're right. I think businesses like we are, who clearly embrace it and are passionate about it, if we are moving our report to what impact has happened, then other businesses may follow as well. I noticed that Grenville's put a note on the chat, it could be an opportunity for us. If we can do that internally, we can do it for other businesses as well. And I guess for us, we work with, Geraldine will tell me if this number's moved, but over 4,000, maybe 5,000 businesses across Manchester. Nick mentioned that you are working with 100. We are working with even more. And I was thinking, well, what can we do to help encourage those businesses even more as well? But maybe we, leading by example. We are doing lots, but actually that it's, why would they want to do it? Why would they want to choose to do it? And maybe we can, we've got a role possibly to play there as well, or probably, should I say, to play there as well, Claire. Really good point. So leave that with us.
One of the biggest impacts of delivering social value activity is staff retention across many, many sectors, certainly tech and IT. And what we've definitely found working with some of the companies who are in IT tech is it does lead to staff retention. If you're a happy company, you communicate well with your staff that you do all this stuff and that you mean it and that it delivers real impact and delivers real social value. Your staff are more likely to stay with your company. We've got a few examples of chief executive who occasionally gets involved with the interview process, and the person's turned it round to the chief exec and said, why should I work here? Because I can go and work for these other companies. And it is often this stuff that makes the difference between whether staff stay or staff go. It can be, it's bound to be money and terms and conditions. This stuff does help you keep staff. It helps them be happier employees, and that's better for your company.
Yeah, and that can go back to what Claire was saying. That's part of that, I guess, intangible benefit that we haven't yet said is some of the impact. And I know, it is encouraging, even what you were saying before about how many of our team get involved in all of this, and that has grown over the years. And I'm sure you've seen that, Jean. And I know that Geraldine's just popped a note up to thank them. I know many of them are around the session today listening in, and the good work they do. And maybe they can come up with some ideas to help us work out how we then demonstrate that impact even more within the business and externally, and help others to embrace it. And I think the other thing that I just want to say before I forget and get into trouble is that clearly, today for us, for Beever and Struthers, we before lockdown, we were embarking on lunch and learn sessions. So we would feed our team and tell them lots of different things and bring ideas and thoughts, and like today's session to them. Clearly, we're not in the office and around the table. I'm having a bit of a scoff as we're doing this, but actually this is classed as brunch and learn. So the money that we would have spent on the brunch is actually going to the food banks today as well. So even today there's that small element happening as well in the background. So I don't know whether any of my colleagues from Forever Manchester have anything else they'd like to say in terms of today's message. For me, I'm really embracing the cultural aspect, and I guess the belief and finding those that really want to do things and encouraging them, making it easy. What Kate said, and maybe there's something we can work on between ourselves, between Forever Manchester and Beavers, taking what we do and how can others make that easy and helping that might, as Kate said, probably will help other organisations. And then just looking at how this impacts internally as well, but just the momentum of us all getting behind it, encouraging others to get behind it, whether it's small or large, and pushing that forward and becoming that powerful Greater Manchester that we are, but really, really helping our community. So I don't know whether you've got anything else you'd like to say, Nick or Jean?
Yeah, Sue, I think I started by saying, talking about institutions. If institutions drive this, so, going back to Kate's point about SMEs being overawed, and I think John Toons endorsed what she said, they will be overawed because there's evidence already that it's being hijacked. You've got an institution, the socialvalue.org or whatever it's called, Social Value UK. Yeah. If you read their stuff, there's some great stuff on there, but it's already becoming jargonized. If it becomes jargonized and complicated, you've already lost the plot. And in people, it's too complicated. It does become a tick box exercise. It doesn't mean anything. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. If we don't do this as a group of people, this generation of people, us, if we don't do it, no one will do it. And we will be, I'm not going to use the word I was going to use there, but we will be royally screwed.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? And our job, I guess, as the business owners and those of the generations further on, is to help encourage it, isn't it? Which is what you were saying earlier. Whether that be in business or personally, it is just that, embracing it from my perspective.
If you focus on, classic thing that, the business, who are your stakeholders? There is an element that some stakeholders always get left off, right? Your colleagues, families, and future generations of your colleagues' families are who we're talking about really here now. So yeah, we've got to get through the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 10 years, but it's the future in our hands. And you don't let this get swallowed up like everything else does. And my lasting concern here is that Build Back Better. Just go and Google it and see how many people are using it. That phrase to me is already lost.
Yeah.
Social value is just jargon. This is about making community a cause. This is about creating a tribe of people who actually give a shit about the community and our lives going forward.
And there you go. You never know. We might get a strapline on some social media with Geraldine that Beever and Struthers do give her. Nick, I think that's a brilliant way to end it, isn't it? We do, don't we? We all give a poo, I'm going to say. Talking about that conversation earlier, and I think today's been brilliant for me, and I'm really hoping everyone around the session's got something from it, and actually we all now go and move on. I'm not even going to say the BBB bit. We all go and move on and take action. I think that's what this is about for me, is taking action, and I know we will internally. It's been absolutely great. So thank you all for your involvement. We'll keep in touch. We'll do it again, Nick. Shall we do it again, Nick?
Yeah, let's do it again. See how we're getting on.
Yeah, let's do it at the point, and see how we've got on. And yeah, brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.